Bershus, Echai, V'rei, Harabonim Hagaonim, Roshei, Machane Yisrael, Manhigei Atzibur, Mechanchem, and Kahal Kodesh. Just looking down from this podium and seeing the immense crowd that came together tonight is, as Dr. Levinson said, a Kiddush Hashem. I visited Manchester once about 13 years ago, and I gave some shiurim. But what has brought me to Manchester tonight? What has brought us all together tonight? What brought this huge crowd, each and every one of you, to leave his home, to leave his shiurim, to leave his Beis Medrash, and to be here with us? We have come to speak about our most treasured asset, our most precious gift. We've come to speak about our kindalach. And we come to speak about our children. Because nothing is as precious to a Yiddish tata and a Yiddish mama as our children. David Melech Yisrael, Noim Zmiros Yisrael, 150 Pirkei Tehillim. Each and every one of them is a Kinyan Olam for every Yid in the world. What was David HaMelech's very last tefillah? Kapitlayim Beis in Sefer Tehillim concludes, Kolu Tfilos David ben Yisha. And Rashi explains that is a tefillah that David said Le'ez Ziknusai when he crowned Shlomo HaMelech to be his successor. Kolu Tfilos David ben Yisha. That was his very last prayer. We could assume it was a tefillah of extreme significance. And the very first posuk in this kapitel Ayin Beis, is Elokim Mishpotecho lemelech tein, v'tzidkoscho leben melech. Rashi explains, Midas Adin, Mishpotecho, Hayesurim, Yehu kolim bi, v'hatzedoko tein lebini. And that is the tefillah of every Yiddish father and every mother. If there's any midas adin that we deserve, please, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let it be us, and save our children. For our children and our kindalach, please, Tzidkoscho leben melech, midas arachamim, give them, spare them from suffering, from tzar, from pain. Hayesurim Yehu kolim bi, v'hatzedoko ten lebni. So we have come to discuss our kindalach and what we could do to safeguard and to see to it that they should all be Zera Berach Hashem. We should have nachas. Ki yodativ למען שיצא בונה ובייס היחל ושומרו דרך השם לעשיס צדקו ומשפט. כי הודעת is a lotion of chibur, of ahava. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I love Avraham Avinu. Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu love Avraham Avinu? It is quite obvious that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has many reasons to love Avraham Avinu. Asor nisim nisnas Avraham Avinu v'yomed b'kulam. Avraham Avinu, 22 Shas, Yom Chavches, Sochem Davdalet, Kiyam Avraham Avinu, no, that's Saf Kiddushin, and Yom Chavches, Kiyam Avraham Avinu, Kol HaTorah Kula Ad Shelo Nitno. Avraham Avinu received nothing from his father besides Avodah Zorah. He discovered a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Ad shehitzitz olav Baal Abira v'yomar, Ani hu Baal Abira. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has many reasons to love Avraham Avinu. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ki yudater, why do I love Avraham Avinu? L'man asher yitzav es b'moi v'beiser achov v'shamru derech Hashem. So that is first and foremost the greatest obligation, the greatest chiyuv, the greatest privilege every Yid has, to pass the torch on to the coming generation. To transmit to his children what he received from his father and from his grandfather. Just 2 weeks ago, Belela Seder. That is our greatest obligation. How? We've come together not only to discuss child molestation. What could we do as preventive measures? We would all prefer to prevent than deal with tragedies as they unfold. In Berachas HaTorah, there are 2 brachas. First one, obviously, is Berachas HaMitzvah shekedishonu b'mitzvah yitzivonu. Ma'ule sheba brachos, the Gemara says, is the Berachas HaShevach HaShavach HaRabonu. But then there's the middle bracha, in which we plead with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'harevnu Hashem Elokeinu es divrei Torascho b'finu. ונהיה אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי צאצאינו כולנו יודי שמך ולומדי סורסך לשמה. It is very uncommon that we have 2 bakushas in one bracha. Brachas are usually very focused. 2 distinct bakushas in one bracha. I said many times, these 2 bakushas are 2 sides of the very same coin. It is only if we will have the schus of V'harevnu Hashem Elokeinu es divrei Torascho b'finu, and our children will experience the beauty of Torah and the love of Torah and the passion of Torah, that we stand a fair chance. V'niyeh anachnu b'tzetzoeinu v'tzetzoi tzetzoeinu kulonu. So the greatest gift we could give to our children is the passion and the beauty of Torah and of Kiyum HaMitzvahs. And then we could hope and pray and have a fair chance that our children will wish to follow in our footsteps and partake in this magnificent endeavor, in this greatest of simchas, which is Ahavas Torah and Yiras Shamayim. And Simchas HaTorah and Simchas HaMitzvah have to be obvious. They have to be evident. The Gemara tells a story in Brachas, Daf Tesam Beis. Omelei Ule l'Rav Eloi. Ki eiles lahosam shul b'shalmed derav broina ochi. B'mamed kol hachavur. Odem godol hu v'sameach b'mitzvahs. Please give my best regards to my brother Rav Broina in Eretz Yisrael. He's a great man. What makes him a great man? Odem godol hu v'sameach b'mitzvahs. Zimne choda. It once transpired. Somach geula letfila v'loi posek chukem mepumei kule yoyma. He was somach geula letfila, and he was smiling and radiant all day. Let's try to imagine, my dear friends, we're walking down the street, and a person we know very well comes across the other way, and he's laughing to himself. He's smiling to himself. And we ask him, are you the one that won the lottery? 50 million pounds yesterday night? He says, no, I never buy lottery tickets. Did you do a shidduch with your daughter yesterday night? No, I'm still davening, I'm still hoping. But you seem to be very happy. What is it? He said, oh, I said Tehillim this morning and it went well. I think most of us will just stand there and say to ourselves, maybe he needs help. Maybe I know a psychologist that could be helpful. But that is exactly what Ula tells Rav Eloi. Zimna choda, sumach ge'ula l'tfilo. V'loi posek chukim mepumei kilayim. It was so obvious. He was radiating simcha. He had a smile all day. That is when our ruchnius is as precious to us, more precious to us than any earthly pleasures. But simchas mitzvah must be obvious. And there's another Gemara in Menachos, Yud Ches Omed Aleph, Omer Rebbe, Geshabosi, Lamatzas Midoisa Yetzel Rabbi Loza ben Shemua, V'Talmid Echad Hoya Lo Rabbi Yosef HaBavli, Hoya Chavav Arav Adla Achas. And the Gemara tells the story of Rabbi Loza ben Shemua giving a shiur, Tzavu Panov Shel Yosef HaBavli. And Yosef HaBavli was so moved, and so happy, and so radiant. His face shone. And Rabbi Loza ben Shemua looks at his Talmud, and he sees his unbelievable simchas HaTorah, v'zolgu einav demois. And Rabbi Loza ben Shemua is moved to tears, not tears of pain. He is moved to tears, and he says, Ashreichem talmidei chachamim, shedivrei Torah chavivim aleichem b'yosel. Kol ha'olav es ha'posok hazeh. Kol ha'olav es ha'posok hazeh. Mo ahavti sarosacho kol ha'yogim yisichos. So there's a very well-known tune, Ashreichem talmidei chachamim. And whenever I hear that, I am moved to tears, because in my imagination, I see the Rabbi Loza ben Shemua sitting in his yeshiva. And in my vision, I see Rabbi Yosef HaBavli, V'tzavu Panov. And I see the Rabbi Loza ben Shemua crying and saying, Ashreichem talmidei chachamim shedivrei Torah chavivim aleichem b'yosel. Simchas HaTorah must be obvious, and Simchas HaMitzvah must be evident. And when our children will see their father, Molei Simcha, with his passion for Torah and passion for mitzvah, that is the greatest gift we could give our children. I remember as a young bocher, we once had a mashgiach come to give a shiur in yeshiva, and I apologize if I'm sounding critical, but it goes without saying that I'm not mentioning names, but we had a mashgiach that gave a shiur in yeshiva. And he spoke about Simchas HaTorah and Simchas HaTorah and Simchas HaTorah. And as a young boy, I thought to myself, if he's such a great mumche in Simcha, how come he never smiles? He never smiles. He's always edgy, he's always grouchy, he's always nervous. Does he know that much about Simcha? When a person is happy, it's obvious. When Rabbi Loza ben Shemua gave a shiur, Tzavu Panov Shel Yosef HaBavli, and Rav Broina, Kishasomach ge'ula l'tfila lo posek chukim mepumei kiloyoyma. And this is so important, that our children grow up in homes and in yeshivas in which they see what Simchas HaTorah is and what Simchas HaMitzvah is. And they have loads of happiness and of passion and of love for Torah. And it should be obvious, it should be radiating. That is the atmosphere in which our children need to grow up. And that is the only way. And the only guarantee. Kulahai v'ulai, together with our fellows. That way they will grow up with Ahavas Torah and Yiras Shamayim. The Gemara in Psachim Peiches Amud Aleph says on the Posuk in Novi, Lechu v'neilchu el Har Hashem el Beis Yaakov. That is where the concept of Beis Yaakov comes from. לכו ונלכו על הר השם על בייס יעקב. לא כאברהם שקורא הר, ולא כיצחק שקורא סודה, אלא כיעקב שקורא Weiss. And my feeling, b'derech drash, is we're always looking for ways. How do we safeguard our homes? How do we try to do our best not to expose our children to negative influences? What could we do to see to it that they really grow up loving Torah and loving Yireh Shamayim, with a passion for Torah and for mitzvahs and dveikus in HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So some people, Korei Har, try to build your fortress on the top of a hill, on the top of a mountain. Maybe there it'll be safe. Some people, Korei Soda, try to pitch your tent in the middle of a barren field. Maybe nobody will get there. Like Avraham shekorei Har, v'lo ki Yitzchak shekorei Soda, ki Yaakov shekorei Weiss. The yeshiva should be a home, the cheder should be a home, and most important, your home should be a home with warmth, with love, with passion, with closeness. It is not enough to build moats and walls around our communities. Moats were never successful in keeping enemies at bay. Walls could be scaled, they could be tunneled under. We must fill up those walls with love and Warmkeit and warmth and happiness. It is only then that we could really expect our children not to try to look elsewhere. They should be so enriched and so happy with what they have and with the great gifts that we have to offer them. That is the only way we could ultimately be successful in our chinuch endeavors. My great Rebbe, the Kloisenberg Rebbe, I heard many times quoting the Chofetz Chaim. Chofetz Chaim said that the Malamed of Leibel Trotsky, he was one of the leaders of the Bolshevik Revolution, as probably some of you know, Leon Trotsky. And as a child, he learned in Cheder. And obviously, he went astray. And the Chofetz Chaim used to say that the Malamed of Leibel Trotsky is also litmus adin for the millions upon millions that were lost, the millions of our brethren that were lost by the Bolshevik Revolution. So it is the greatest responsibility one can imagine. Each and every Yiddish neshama, generations and doiris. And that is a sacred trust that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave into our hands as parents, as fathers, as mothers, as mechanech. And we need to do our best. Our homes, I said many times, the home of a Ben Torah should be the happiest home in the world. And why not? Why not? We have Torah, we have mitzvahs, we have a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Simchas HaTorah and Simchas HaMitzvah must fill up our homes and the love of our children. And our Chadorim and our yeshivas should be the same. So I remember growing up as a little boy in New York. Baruch Hashem, I arrived to Eretz Yisrael with my late father, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha, 3 days before my bar mitzvah. And in Cheder, I can't say I had very great Rebbe's. Going back 50 years, I think Chadorim today are far better than they were then. Mechanchim are more qualified than they were then. But when I was 11 years old, a new Rebbe came to Cheder. And he radiated so much warmth and love for the children. I remember that was a turning point for me. As a yingala, as a little boy. And I remember he never hit a child. But we were so pained just to disappoint him. That was the greatest thing. His closeness to the Talmidim. We didn't want to let him down. Just disappointing him caused us so much pain. That is a true machanech. So about 35 years later, I spoke in a Gouda convention in New York. Thousands of people were there. And I mentioned this Rebbe with his name. And when my drosha was over, and people stood in line just to shake my hand, a person approaches me, I didn't recognize him the first minute, and he said, I was your Rebbe. And I was so moved to see him once again, so many years later. And I was so happy that I could repay a little of the Torahs that I had from him. So we've come together to deal with one of the most painful challenges we have in our day and age, and that is child abuse and child molestation. I felt it important, first of all, to convey this message. Unhappy children are easy prey. The happier our children will be, the more fulfilled they will be. They will be far more immune to abuse and to molestation. And it is extremely important, and I cannot even stress how important this is, that parents should have a relationship with their children. The children should feel they could speak to their parents about everything. One of the most tragic manifestations of child abuse and molestation is that children are ashamed to share with their parents, either afraid or ashamed. And sometimes these tragic episodes don't come out until years later, sometimes decades later. And this is a sore that develops and deepens, and it destroys the neshama of the child. Parents should have open eyes and open ears and be aware that maybe their children were hurt. If there's any sudden change in behavior, in behavioral patterns of children, a decline in motivation, children become more closed and they seem to have lost some of their natural happiness. Parents should be aware that something is happening to their children, and children should be encouraged to share with their parents. If we could identify these problems in the earliest stages, we could do so much good for our children and for all those that are involved, not only for the victims, for those that hurt them as well. So there's a mistaken perception, and most people think when we speak about abuse or molestation, it is always about pedophiles, about bad people. Not always. In the vast majority of cases, we are dealing with things that happen between children. Older children, sometimes young teenagers or older teenagers, hurting little kids. It is not always adults, evil, bad people who are showing that are preying on little children. In the vast majority of cases, we're dealing with kids. Both sides are kids, the perpetrators and the victims. older children, younger children, teenagers hurting kids. Many times it's within the family. Older brothers, younger brothers, older brothers hurting younger sisters, brothers-in-law, sometimes Shumbalite hurting children within the family. So the high-profile cases are predators and pedophiles, but that is not the majority of cases. The majority of cases are within the family, within the schools, and we need to have an eine pekicha. Parents observing their children, mechanchen observing their talmidim, and developing an atmosphere at home and in cheder and in school which encourages openness. Children should be free to speak if they were touched, if they were hurt, if they were molested. And when children do speak up, to know how to react, how to embrace them, how to encourage them. Because in most of the cases, both sides are victims, and not only one side. And both sides deserve our utmost care and treatment. I sat with the Rabbanim of the community today, and we discussed many important halachic aspects and halachic issues, which I do not feel very important to share with the entire tzibur. But this is one of the greatest challenges we have in our day and age, and we need to rise to the challenge for the well-being of the coming generation of this community, of our kindlech. Sometimes we tend not to believe. It's impossible that this person could do such a terrible act. He's a Talmid Chacham, he's a Mechanech. How could this be? And we say, no, it's impossible. It never happened. That is a mistake. Obviously, we are human beings. And as human beings, we have shortcomings. And yes, it happens in our communities as well. Baruch Hashem, it's not very common, but it happens. And it is not very uncommon. And sometimes people you would never imagine, but yes, sometimes people that seem to be good people, and Talmidei Chachamim could do terrible things. A few months ago, I get a telephone call from a Choshev Arav in Yerushalayim, one of the Choshevs that are born in Yerushalayim. And he says that a young man is in court right now, and he's being judged. He's in court right now. And the judge comes to my shiur, and he has tremendous respect for me. And he said, in the middle of the proceeds, if Rabbi Weiss will tell me to let him free, I will do so. So the father of this young man called his Rav, and the Rav calls me. Could you please call the judge and tell him to free this young man? I tell him, well, the judge won't answer his phone in the middle of the case. Some Rabbanim do answer their phones in the middle of the case, but a judge wouldn't do that. So the Rav tells me, no, I'll call the father of the younger man and he will give the phone to the judge. The judge said, if you tell him to free him, he'll free him. So I say, okay. I won't say no. The Rav is a very close friend of mine, and he's a Choshev Rav in Yerushalayim. So he called the father of this younger man, and the father tells the judge, Rabbi Weiss wants to talk to you. So the judge, he's a Talmud of mine, says, okay, Rabbi Weiss wants to talk. So he takes the phone, and I ask him, what is it about? So he said, well, this young man molested 9 children in cars, in basements, in dark alleys. Kvod Arav, he asked me, would you invite this person to your home for a Shabbos when your Einik Lachar around? And I said, in no way. So the judge said, okay. Then I got upset from the Rav and shut off the phone. I called the Rav back. The Rav said, I know this younger man, et nicht cheppen a fleeg. He won't hurt a fly. There are some people that won't hurt a fly, but they could destroy the life of a child. That is the Yetzer Hara. Most of us won't. The vast majority of us won't. Any person that really has an neshama and a heart won't. But there are different people, and some of them will. So you cannot assume, knowing a person, that he's such a good person, he will never do anything bad. It's part of human nature. And there are different people. And you could never judge without checking the facts. So, Baruch Hashem was the biggest idols in the city. And Baruch Hashem, the Rabbonim have taken this issue in their hands. And everything we do in our communities has to be led by the Gedolei Torah of the community, the Rabbonim of the community. That is the only way we have, and that is the way it should be. So I was invited by the Rabbonim of this community to come and share and try to inspire the Olam. And it's a call to arms. So the Rabbonim and the Manhigim of this community will put together a Va'ad of Rabbonim, who will try to deal and to be helpful. But the most important thing is the awareness of each and every individual, each and every parent, each and every machanach. The awareness of this problem, vigilance, and knowing how important it is. Keeping nafshenu hadav. We are dealing with many terrible problems. Kids at risk, losing children, and many other problems. Shatznius yofolahem. Im hoyachochem v'meivin medatoi. Ein melamdin ela b'yochid. This assembly and this olam is so huge and so choshuv. There are things we wouldn't like to discuss, Rabbi. But most of these problems have their roots in abuse and in molestation. We know today how negatively it affects the development of children as they grow up in many, many ways. And it has many manifestations. Marital problems, very many problems. So this is Reishis Chayil saying to care for our children and to do our utmost. First of all, to prevent, to foster relationships and to foster an atmosphere in our moistus and our homes that will prevent. And if things happen, our children should share, and we should be aware before tragedy is so deep. And sometimes the tragedy and the damage is irreparable. And also to deal with perpetrators, if they are. We hope they will be as few as possible, but when things do happen, to know how to deal with them. So it is my bracha to the Chorsa Rabbonim of this community. Chayfetz Hashem b'yodeinu yatzliach. We should be zocheh to be mekadosh Shem Shemayim, and we should all have nachas from our kindlech, because that is the greatest aspiration and the greatest cholam and the greatest dream of each and every one of us. Elokim mishpotecho lemelech teim yitzikosto leben melech. We should all have nachas from our children. And a Kodesh Baruch Hu is a father. Kodesh Baruch Hu is a nachas from seine Kinder. We relate to a Kodesh Baruch Hu as children relate to the father. And we daven and we say, Ovinu Malkeinu. Ovinu Avur HaChama. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a father, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say nachas b'zayne kinderlich. What is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's nachas? As we learn in Brachas Tezayin. Ashrei mi she'amalei b'toyre v'oiseh nachas ruach yotze. We should all have nachas, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have nachas, and we should be zocher b'kol b'yameinu. To see Doris Yishorim Mivarochem Lekabel Pnei Moshiach Tzidkeinu. And when Moshiach will come, the Medrash says, Shevel Kitois Mekabel Pnei Moshiach. 7 groups will be Mekabel Pnei Moshiach. And the Gemara is Moina V'Hoilach, not the Gemara the Medrash. Who are those 7 groups? Kat Talmidei Chachamim, Kat Melamdei Tenoikos. And Chazal asks, who will be the first? Who will be those that will be Miyamino Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu when time will come? Kat Melamdei Tenoikos. Shenemar Ne'imois Biyamincho Netzach. Why does that mean Kat Melamdei Tenoikos? So Chazal bring the posuk Ne'imois Biyamincho Netzach. They will be Liyamino Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because that is what Chinuch is all about. Noyam HaTorah, Drochei Udarkei Noyam, Ne'imois Biyamincho Netzach. And that is my bracha to all the mechanchim of this great community. Ne'imois Biyamincho Netzach, we should be zocher b'kol b'yameinu, to be amongst those shivakatois shenekabel pnei Moshiach Tzidkeinu, b'bias goyel tzedek v'mheiru v'yom.